Lisa Hribar here to talk about some of the heroes, maybe the not so famous ones, of the Revolutionary War. So we all know about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, John Paul Jones. They're people that are very famous, Benjamin Franklin. These are folks that also contributed and helped out in the Revolutionary War, but maybe aren't as well known. We'll start off with Ezra Lee, Sergeant Ezra Lee. He actually manned the first submarine. It was called the Turtle. Very different from modern day submarines. This thing floated on top of the water, kind of looked like a little cork bobbing along the water. His mission was in New York Harbor to approach a British warship, drill a hole in it so it would sink. He drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled. Unfortunately for him, the British warships had a copper covering that he couldn't drill through. So instead he retreated. He had a bomb that he set off. He did no damage, but he frightened the British enough that they sailed away. So his mission was actually successful. Next up is Nathan Hale. Nathan was a Connecticut school teacher in the Continental Army, and George Washington asked him to do a risky mission, which was to spy. And he roamed the countryside in New York, taking information down, drawing pictures, amassing information to take back to Washington on what the British were up to. Unfortunately for Nathan Hale, he was caught, and he was not afforded any of the rights that spies were usually given. He was condemned without a trial, was told he could write a letter, wrote the letter. It was torn up right in front of him. As he climbed the steps to be hung, they asked him if he had any last words, and his last words were, "I regret that I only have one life to give for my country." Moving on, we have Baron von Steuben. Baron von Steuben was a German citizen. He somewhat inflated his credentials, saying he was a baron. He truly wasn't. Benjamin Franklin saw through all this, but what Baron von Steuben was a motivator. He came to George Washington's troop, his Continental Army, and took these unskilled farmers, these unskilled shopkeepers, and turned them into soldiers. And he did it by making them laugh. He didn't speak English, so with a combination of German and French and a mix of other languages, he managed to communicate with them and got them into a tight army. Once the Revolutionary War was over, he chose to remain in the U.S., became a U.S. citizen, and was given a little stipend by the government and lived out his days in New York. Next we have Henry Knox. Oh, let's fix that. We have Henry Knox. Henry Knox helped out by taking cannons from Fort Ticonderoga to Boston to help the Patriot soldiers there. It had to be done during the winter time. How else would you transport these heavy cannons but across snow? So he made this journey with these heavy cannons from Fort Ticonderoga all the way to Boston, helping out the Patriots in Boston. Last we have Sybil Ludington. I put Paul Revere here. Sybil was like Paul Revere in the fact that she, in New York, warned citizens that the British were coming to clear out. It was not safe. Paul Revere's ride was about 14 miles. Sybil's was between 30 and 40 miles, but yet we all hear about Paul Revere, and Sybil Ludington is probably a name you've not heard of. So consider how these folks advanced the cause for the Patriots.